Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continuously unexpected. So uncivilized.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And the final episode of the Mortis arc is upon us. So yes, we're talking Clone Wars, episode 17 from season 3. But before we get into the finale of the Gods of Mortis, Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found online?
You got it, Dennis. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, as I just mentioned a moment before, we're going to be discussing Ghosts of Mortis, which is the final episode in the 3-episode arc from the Clone Wars, and it's episode 17 from season 3. A lot to talk about here. Another heavy episode, just like the 2 that preceded it. With that said, we've got another lengthy summary here, but we want to make sure to hit those points so that we can flesh out our discussion. And Jay, you want to go ahead and read that for us, please?
Absolutely. Anakin has second thoughts about leaving Mortis without the father's blessing and leaves to find him while Obi-Wan and Ahsoka repair the ship. The father sends Anakin to seek counsel from the Force, and then Anakin encounters Qui-Gon Jinn's Force ghost and is instructed to find the well of the dark side and learn the truth about himself. There, the son shows Anakin his future, but promises him they work together to destroy the future empire and bring peace to the galaxy. Later, the father erases this memory from Anakin. After retrieving the dagger of Mortis from the daughter's grave, the son intends to slay his father, but the father uses the dagger on himself to weaken the son's power. Anakin then kills the son. As the father dies, the monastery crumbles, and Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan wake up back on their ship.
So yeah, this is we were just talking about all the metaphors and symbolism that Dave Filoni was mentioning in the episode guide for the last episode, and there's a whole lot more of that here. What do you think about this episode, Jay?
Oh, it's like a fever Force dream, right? But the fortune cookie, I think, really sets us up for this. He who seeks to control fate shall never have peace. And that is a very far-reaching statement to a lot of things that happen, not only in this particular episode, but also in obviously other places in Star Wars as well. And so again, just like we were talking about with the last episode, this one sets up so many questions, and it does kind of answer some things that we were wondering about in the last episode, but then again, it also really convolutes some other things as well. And just like in the last 2 episodes, there are some definite references and feels, I guess you could say, to what happens in other areas of Star Wars as well, whether that be in the movies or whether it be in another story or in Legends or whatever. So another just absolutely great episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought that little fortune cookie was like really, not in a bad way, but really on the nose for Anakin there. The person, he who attempts to control fate is never going to have peace. Well, that's exactly what happens to him, with him attempting to alter what he believes to be Padme's fate, dying in childbirth by falling to the dark side so he can gain the power he needs. Well, he altered the future, and not in a good way for himself, her, and everybody else. So we can't get any further without talking about the bomb Dave Filoni drops in the episode guide, and how they were going to include a couple of well-known Sith from Legends in this episode. in none other than Darth Bane and Darth Revan. And they went so far as to create the designs, which are in the Clone Wars files, create the models, which are in the Clone Wars files, and shoot the scene, but never get it into the full animation. They showed it to George, who liked it, but they ultimately decided they needed to remove it because the Sith can't separate themselves from the Force in this way in order to talk to Anakin and the Son and the like. And that makes sense. And you really get the impression when you're listening to Dave talk about this, that he really wanted to do it for the fans, the fans of Darth Bane, the fans of Darth Revan, but they owed it to Star Wars to not screw up the story, to not screw up the mythology and everything that comes with the Force, so that they had to be left out. But he knows how cool that would have been for so many fans.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, you got the models and stuff now. Can you figure out some other way to use them in a Star Wars animated show?
Yes, please.
But
Old Republic animated show, please.
Yeah, but after I heard, what was your reaction to hearing all that? I can
Oh,
guess.
yeah. It hit me like, a ton of bricks, in that I thought, oh gosh, we could have gotten this, but I get it, and so it's, again, Dave is so understanding of the why of all of this. Yes, he loves to do the what. He loves to create things. He loves to, again, step outside of the box in some ways, but yet he understands what George wanted for the story, what he wanted for, to, and he said the implications were just going to be too much if they did this. I have to say, though, I wonder if those scenes are still out there somewhere. I mean, could we please just release like the lost episodes kind of thing and featurettes?
Yeah.
We won't hold on to them too much, Dave, but can we see them? Just see them. I would love to just see it.
Yeah, I haven't looked. Hadn't had a chance to look since I was working on these notes and when we're recording today, but I would love to see it. And I get it. I mean, I would like to know the context of the scene, but one of the things that occurred to me is like, okay, if you were going to have, the Sith don't have Force ghosts, or they're not supposed to. They actually do in the Old Republic MMORPG, but in the current universe and the continuity that George Lucas has set up, they're not capable of it because they cannot let go of the self in order to make that necessary. But that doesn't mean they couldn't have shown up as visions in some way. I mean, it's if the Son can keep coming after Anakin with apparitions of Shmi Skywalker and his own self and the like this, and he is capable of seeing the future, which would lead to me, he's capable of knowing the past. He could have created them as visions and stuff. But I can also see that with so much being left open to interpretation across these 3 episodes, why they wouldn't have done that to give people the wrong impression and stuff. But,
sure. Yeah. And I would think that they would show up, if anywhere, in this well of the dark side, and, and being the Son's guides, so to speak. But, then again, there's the monolith in and of itself is almost like a big old holocron. So it could have very easily been explained that it could attune to being able to pick up on those Force ripples, I guess you could say. But
for one moment, both Bane and Revan were canon. So
yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got to move on. We just spent about 7 minutes talking about these 2, and they're not even actually in the episode. So, okay. So, Anakin goes off on this mission, and he runs into the Father, and then the Father tells him, you got to go discover who your true self is. And then he runs into Qui-Gon Jinn's Force Ghost. So, speaking of Force Ghosts, you actually get one here. And Qui-Gon affirms that his belief that Anakin actually is the chosen one. And then he sends him off to a nearby place that's strong in the dark side, which we come to find out is the well of the dark side, where the dark side for the entire universe flows through, apparently. And Qui-Gon then tells him to remember his training and to trust his instincts. Okay. One, I got the tree on Dagobah vibes from all of this. It's just like Yoda telling Luke, in there you must go, and your weapons, you won't need them. What's in there, only what you take with you, type of a thing. But we already had this conversation about Qui-Gon from the first episode of the arc, and But here it is again. So is this really Qui-Gon this time? Or is it the son using his tricks again to get Anakin where he wants him to go? What are your thoughts?
This time, I think it's the trick because as we talked about with the first episode and Obi-Wan encountering Qui-Gon's ghost, and Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan asks him, "How are you here?" And Qui-Gon says, "Because you are here." And the things that he said, "You've got to get Anakin away from this place." So why would he change his tune and tell Anakin, "You've got to go to the place on this entity where the dark side's the strongest"? That doesn't seem to add up for me. But then again, I could see that Qui-Gon felt that maybe Anakin needed this as a trial to overcome. But I'm still leaning towards that it was the son. How do you feel?
I am very split on this one, and here's why. When the son is messing with Anakin or Ahsoka or anyone else, he always ends up revealing himself. Whether he's pretending to be Shmi, whether he's pretending to be Anakin, whether he's pretending to be that little gnome thing from the prior episode. Here, Qui-Gon is always Qui-Gon. He shows up as Qui-Gon, he disappears as Qui-Gon. He doesn't show up as the son. Doesn't prove anything because, we're just looking at the chain of events, but it's suggestive. 2, the son attempts to convince Anakin once he gets into the well to join him, and he's going to show him the future. Whereas Qui-Gon is sending him there for, I think, it's like almost cautionary. The same way Yoda was sending Luke to that cave. I keep calling it the tree, but it's the cave on Dagobah, which was in the roots of a cave. So anyways, I'm right both ways. At any rate. And so, and he reminds him, "I believe you're the chosen one, that you are going to bring balance to the Force." And he also tells him to remember his training and trust his instincts. So I'm not certain that the son would have said those things. The son would have said something about, you'll learn. I think it would have been more direct. You'll see the future. You'll see what you must do. Those type of things. Whereas Qui-Gon really is leaning into, you're the chosen one. You're going to bring balance to the Force. But I don't know that I can say it's clear cut either way. I really have a hard time. I think this is intentionally ambiguous, and you can look at it either way.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, for sure. And that's this entire 3-episode arc is exactly that.
Right. So Anakin makes his way to the well of the dark side, and he pilots his little speeder, which is apparently based off of some designs for speeder bikes that they were unused for Return of the Jedi, which is fine because I think the ones from Return of the Jedi are cooler than this one, but that's neither here nor there. And so the son goes about attempting to recruit Anakin again, and he basically forces on him a vision of the future. And it's a lot of things we're familiar with. It's Darth Sidious using Force lightning, and we see Padme being joked and pleading with Anakin. We see Obi-Wan yelling at Anakin, "Anakin, you are my brother." And then Alderaan gets destroyed, and then that vision of the mask of Vader comes out of the smoke and then blows away behind him there. And once that's done, Anakin's beside himself. I'm going to do such terrible things there. And he agrees to join with the son so they can destroy this future emperor and this future empire and establish peace throughout the galaxy. I just described the whole scene. What's your take on it?
Well, again, back to the fortune cookie, who seeks to control fate shall never have peace. And so, I think that's it in a nutshell, but you feel Anakin's anguish in that I will do such terrible things because he's already been through so much and he's already done some terrible things, up to this point as well. And so for him to see and face those things head on and then to make the decision to not want to follow in that path is very similar to him having his visions of Padme dying in childbirth and trying to stop it.
Yeah.
So, it's like basically the same thing.
Exactly. It's irony on top of irony, is it not? It's he creates all these things because he's attempting to change fate by discovering a way to get the power to keep Padme alive. But he's being shown this exact fate, and now he's trying to avoid this one by siding with the Sith. So he sided with the Sith or say the dark side. He sided with the Sith that brought around the future that the Son chose to him, and now he's going to join with the Son in order to prevent the future that came about when he joined the Sith, which leads me to believe whatever would have happened with the Son would have been far worse than what we just saw, which is saying an awful lot. But yeah, you nailed it there. It is so ironic that he was, the fate that he was shown is because he was attempting to control fate, and now he's trying to avoid that fate by controlling fate again. It's like this crazy never-ending loop.
But yet, even in the last episode, he said, "I will never join the dark side willingly," and here he is.
Yeah.
Basically aligning himself. I don't think he believes that he's joined, but his eyes are very Sithy.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing is that, Obi-Wan shows up, and Anakin tells him that he sees now as the Jedi that stand in the way of peace here after he's had this vision. What is your take on that line?
Well, I'm wondering if once Anakin decided to align himself with the Son, that the Son almost did sort of the same thing that he did to Ahsoka, in that he started to infect Anakin. Because you see, as I said, his eyes turned to that Sith yellow, but then you could see underneath his eyes were dark and sunken. And so you almost wonder if the Son was actually starting to take control of Anakin, just like he did with Ahsoka, but it wasn't as blatant as what he did with her. So, yeah.
I have a kernel of thought, and I'm going to try and get it to blossom here, which is, we were just talking about how, the Jedi lost in our prior episode. The Jedi lost the moment they picked up their lightsabers and were starting to fight this war on behalf of the Republic here. And I think the notion is, and I don't know that Anakin sees this clearly, but as long as the Jedi are involved in this fight, the Sith are going to keep fighting back. And so the Jedi kind of have to withdraw, and Anakin is kind of capable of putting the Sith into place. I don't think Anakin intends in this moment, while he's aligned himself with the Son. I think, to your point, I don't think he even sees himself as falling to the dark side here, but he's going to impose a peace on this galaxy, and it's not possible as long as the Jedi are fighting in this situation here. The Sith they've basically goaded the Jedi into fighting this war. And so they don't even realize that they're the ones that are standing in the way of peace. That if the Sith were just left to do what they're going to do, then, it'd be between the Republic and the Separatists. I'm not describing this clearly, but the fact that the Jedi are involved at all is preventing peace from happening, which is another irony in itself, because the Jedi are supposed to be defenders of peace in the galaxy. But here they are fighting a war.
Yes. Yeah. And it's such a tangled web, because where do where does one stop and the next start as far as standing in the way of peace? And it's just, it makes your head spin.
But, this whole pitch that the Son makes to Anakin, which is that if they join together, they can destroy the Empire. And then he has this vision, they destroy the Emperor that's in this vision, and then he can establish peace throughout the galaxy. I mean, it is the exact same thing. It's like the Son just looked into the future, figured out the pitch that worked from Palpatine that sold Anakin.
Right.
All this. It's like together, at this point he's saying, well, we can destroy the Sith, we can destroy the Jedi, we can bring peace to the galaxy. And what's left unsaid is, like, by subjugating the galaxy here, it's not that you just get rid of the people that are fighting. It's you get rid of the people that are fighting, and then you impose, rule with your iron fist, which is exactly what the Emperor did.
Yeah, absolutely. And quick aside too, the well of the dark side looked very much like Mustafar when they got down there.
Yeah, the trivia guide mentioned that it was based off of Ralph McQuarrie concept designs from a subterranean area where Luke was going to fight the Emperor, and some concepts from the original trilogy movies. So
nice.
Yeah. After all this happens, Anakin encounters the father, and he basically tells Anakin that in order for there to be balance, he must forget everything he just learned. And so he wipes out those memories. And then
Yeah.
he goes on to repeat how Anakin is, in fact, the chosen one. So it kind of speaks to an inevitability that the father knows that Anakin's going to fall to the dark side, that those things are intended to happen. And maybe it isn't so much that Anakin was trying to change fate and then is not going to know peace. It's just that that's what he's intended to do in order to bring about the ultimate balance. This is enough to mess with your head. I mean,
Oh,
it
you're
really
not
is.
kidding.
Yeah. What are your,
Well,
what are your thoughts on what the father said?
yeah, and you could go a step further by saying, well, the father just messed with fate because if Anakin has already seen these things, then by erasing the fact that he's seen them, he's controlled fate in that way. The father has.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's like this whole cycle of like, whoa,
Yeah.
trippy.
I'm getting like a lot of vibes of the Time Variance Authority from the Marvel Universe with
Oh
Loki.
my gosh,
And then
yes.
like in
Good
Star
call.
Trek, when they have I can't remember what they call their temporal authority that comes back when like the timelines, something's happened that wasn't supposed to happen and it's going to alter the timeline. They have to fix it. And like, it's like that as well. And, you know, you get the same discussions like, well, if Anakin knew about this, then would it not have happened or what would have happened in this? But it's the fact that he did learn about it and the father erased his memory about it because it had to happen. And okay. You know, you could get yourself screwed up trying to think of the,
right.
you know, this never ending loop of logic about what is supposed to happen. You know, Anakin was trying to change his fate. And so he brought this trouble upon the galaxy, but by not bringing up the trouble of the galaxy, he can't bring balance to the Force ultimately. Well, what if he had stopped Palpatine to begin with in this situation? Well, we've had balance in that case.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just
So
like even in, in the Marvel universe where they talk about stopping Thanos. How far back do you go?
Yeah.
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 It's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So Star Wars doesn't do time travel, at least not in canon. And but here they
Right.
are, essentially giving us the same argument to debate this.
For sure.
So, you know, the son shows up and retrieves the dagger of Mortis from the tomb that the daughter has been put in because the father basically buried her with it. And he remarks, as we were just talking about in our last episode, about how she was the only one that he truly loved. And so if you haven't heard it, go back to our last episode and catch our conversation about who does the daughter symbolize, whether it's Padme, whether it's the light side of the Force, whether it's, you know, all kinds of different people. And it leads to this ultimate confrontation at the end of the episode where the son is intending to kill the father with this dagger, but the father ends up killing himself because he is the source of the son's power. And then Anakin runs the son through with his lightsaber, actually ends up killing the father at the same time. Well, the father's already dying, but the lightsaber went through, he ran them both through with that. Is this a storytelling flaw? Because if the son was going to kill the father and the father was the source of the power, would the son not have already weakened himself so that Anakin just could have taken him out anyway? Or
Right.
is the father's sacrifice important to this whole thing?
Yeah, and again, this goes back to the first episode in the arc where the son is blasting the father with this force lightning and and the daughter's like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, he was getting ready to die anyways, I'm just speeding the process along. So the son was very much all about getting rid of the father, and then in these final moments he's like, why, what have you done, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, where are you going with this, Sonny?
I mean, there could have been all kinds of unspoken rules, because when Anakin kills the son, the father is still alive. He's dying, but he's still alive. And as he dies, that giant crystal on the top of his monastery shatters. And then ultimately Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka wake up in their shuttle and they're at the rendezvous point where they're supposed to be the entire time. I'm wondering if there wasn't something to this notion that the father was begging Anakin to stay and be the chosen one, and which now brings up another question here, and I'll get to it in just a second. But the idea was that he wanted Anakin to stay and to keep the balance between the son and the daughter there, and keep them in control because he's the chosen one. He could do it. And so maybe whatever power the father had was going to get transferred to Anakin to make that even more possible. That would preserve the daughter. I'm trying to come up with a reason here. The son and the daughter's thing. But if it was so important for Anakin not to know what his future is so that he could be the chosen one, then how could the father expected Anakin to stay there in the first place?
That's a great question. Yeah, because he obviously wanted him to stay, at least at first, because he saw Anakin as being the balance. He's the chosen one to bring balance to the Force. So he saw, okay, well, this is my replacement. I represent balance, so I'm dying. I need someone to take my place. Anakin should be the one to do it. But maybe he had an epiphany at the end in that, as you said, he realized that Anakin had to go on to do all these things and he couldn't interfere with fate. So the balance had to be struck in another way, that it wasn't going to happen there in Mortis. It wasn't going to happen by Anakin taking over for the father. It would have to happen at a different time and a different place, but that he was still going to be the one to do it. Anakin is.
Do you think the father, the son, and the daughter could see the past, present, and future for everyone but themselves?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's possible.
I'm beginning to think it has to be that way because if he believed that Anakin was the chosen one and that he was the one that was capable of keeping a balance between the daughter and the son, boy, this is getting trippy. Then, he would have known that it wouldn't work because Anakin is going to have to go on to fall to the dark side and then ultimately redeem himself by defeating Sidious. But if that was no longer possible once the daughter was dead, then he could see a future. Then it was not possible to preserve any balance because there's no daughter around, right? And then he could see what future he already knew what Anakin's future would have been. So I wonder if that fortune cookie about the whole thing about he who's trying to change fate is never going to know peace applies just as much to the father as it does Anakin.
However, there's also a little thread out there hanging, I guess you could say, in that the daughter's essence was transferred to Ahsoka. So technically, the daughter still lives in Ahsoka. So perhaps the father was hoping that if Anakin and Ahsoka went on, together, or even if they went their separate ways, as everyone kept telling Ahsoka to do, that she would still be able to preserve the light.
I suppose, but would they not want to keep her there at Mortis if that was the case? Because the whole point was that Anakin needed to be there and prevent them from leaving because they would tear the galaxy apart with their alignment to the different sides of the Force. So if it is, I'm not saying that Ahsoka doesn't have some of the daughter's essence. I don't think it is a 1-for-1 transfer in that situation.
No, I don't believe so either.
It seems like, some part of the daughter was used to resurrect Ahsoka, but it's not like she, there was not a void created by the daughter's death that Ahsoka completely fills in that situation. Right. And so because otherwise I think he would just insisted that she stay to keep the son in line. So,
well, not only that, but I mean, instead of being the big griffin that the daughter was, she now appears as Morai too, in this little bird instead of a big old griffin kind of thing.
So but that's more of a point of interpretation, is it not? I mean, is that confirmed anywhere for us? Is that really an interpretation that people are? I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I think there's a lot of things that suggest that, but I don't.
Sure.
But
well, that'll bring us to another little reference video that I found that I was talking to you about offline. But before we get to that, I think, to answer your question too, it's kind of like, and again, for anyone that's not finished The High Republic, please maybe skip ahead for a couple of seconds here. But with Avar and Elzar being left behind on Planet X to control, the light side and the dark side, that could have been what was expected of Anakin and Ahsoka at this point. But now that the son is gone, the father is gone, everything's kind of they don't know any different. They don't want to stay. So there's nothing holding them back, and they don't see the purpose in staying.
Yeah.
There could be that too. So
yeah. Just where I felt like we were getting somewhere with our discussion here. There's like so much more. We've discovered all the ambiguity and the apparent contradictions that may not be contradictions, and I think we've talked around a lot of these questions, and we come up with some answers, but they may not be the definitive answers on all this. But
sure. But did you notice too, right before they go to leave, I think it was right as the father is either dying or getting to that point. We talked before about the whole idea of world between worlds feel in here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice the wolves on the wall behind?
Yeah, I put that in the notes. It was, because it was like, I did see that when I was watching the episode itself, and then the trivia guide for the episode on StarWars.com made mention of that wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the two things that came to mind out of that were, one, the wolves from Lothal, the Loth wolves, and Rebels, and then the art style that was on the wall was like the post-credit art from Ahsoka as well. So
that's true. Yeah.
Another hint, I guess we should have picked up on when we got to Ahsoka.
Sorry.
When we had that season of Ahsoka came out, that ended up in my top 10 songs for the year. That theme.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, on Spotify.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Listen to it a ton. So
love it.
All right. Well, we need to start wrapping this up unless you've got any other final thoughts you want to share.
Well, I had shared with you that when I was going to watch the featurette for these episodes, that I wanted to kind of cheat and see if I could find all of them on YouTube instead of having to go to StarWars.com and then go to the episode and then go to the episode guide and find the featurette and all the things. And so I just searched for it on YouTube, and I did find a compilation that they call them featurettes, and it's under Mr. Anderson 00001 collection is what it is. And so the one that says Secrets of Mortis is actually an interview with Dave Filoni, and it's different from the one that's on StarWars.com. And he's actually talking about the whole idea of coming up with Mortis is that they had gone back to, the notes actually came from a really old binder of George's, and that they sat down with George Lucas and they talked about how they wanted to frame this and what they wanted to do with this and what was going to be the purpose of these episodes. So then when Dave Filoni and Christian Taylor, who came up with the writing on all of these episodes, did it, Dave comes right out and says that they intentionally are not addressing the questions of Mortis. Was Qui-Gon there? Was he not there? Like, he actually says this. All of these different things. He says it is intentionally to make you wonder. So guess what, Dave? Yeah. Objective, you did it. For sure. But it's actually a good little featurette. So I would suggest that. And I got to go back and watch some of the other ones too, because now I'm intrigued with this little channel.
All right. Yeah, this is we could probably talk for another hour about all this, but every episode has to end, and it's time for our discussion on the Mortis arc. But who knows? We'll probably get into a lot of these themes again when we get to season 2 of Ahsoka. So not the last time, I'm sure, we're talking about all this. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this discussion of the Clone Wars and our discussion for the past couple weeks of the Mortis arc. It's been a lot of fun, Jay. I'm glad we got to talk all so much of this out.
Me too.
I like these episodes more now than ever. We've had an opportunity to discuss all of them, but we hope you've all enjoyed it. And if so, we'd love it if you subscribe to the podcast if you have not done so already. And we also appreciate your ratings, reviews, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd invite you to head over to retrozap.com if you want to catch more episodes of the show beyond the 200 or so that are likely to be on your podcatcher. We go all the way back to episode 1. So 1017 prior episodes can be found there. And Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time?
Absolutely. So you definitely don't have to wonder about where to find us. We are on Facebook and Instagram very conveniently at Podcast Stardust. And you can also check out all of our fun Pinterest boards. And we do have our 2 YouTube outlets. So we have our traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And we're also on all the other podcatchers as well. And if we're not where you want to listen to us, let us know. And Dennis has always done a great job of getting us as easily found as possible. And if you want to drop us a line, maybe you have your whole idea of what Mortis means and you want to send us your manifesto, you can do that at podcaststardust@gmail.com. We'd love to hear it, and any other thoughts that you might have. And if you would like to support the show further, you can pick up one of our objects over on TeePublic. And those objects include 7 different show logo designs that you can find on things like t-shirts, sweatshirts, athletic wear, coffee mugs, and all kinds of fun stuff. So if you'd like to pick one of those up, the link to that will be in our show notes.
All right. What's the latest in cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay, mostly as Ahsoka these days, but you never know what you're going to find over there. I do have a couple of different things coming up this spring where I will definitely be featured as Ahsoka, so you'll be seeing a lot of that. But you can also see me as 2 different versions of Hera, the Fourth Sister, my original concept Mandalorian, as well as much, much more. So once again, that's j.snipscosplay.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Friday, we'll be getting into episodes 1 and 2 of Maul Shadowlord. Cannot wait for that.
Yes.
So we recorded this before those episodes came out, so you'll be getting those discussions of Maul at the end of this week. And then on Monday, we're flipping things up and we will be discussing recent Star Wars news. So with that, thanks for listening to episode 1018 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.